As I continue to upload these base set era decks and request decks, I get a lot of responses of people telling me about decks they really enjoy from the Game Boy Color game. In the comment section of the Polyrath budget deck, Sazandora told me about this deck he ran that was kind of based around Polyrath, but also used the Hyper Beam using Pokemon, which are Golduck and Dragonair. By using Hyper Beam over and over again and discarding the energy on your opponent, you made it so that they couldn't attack you back while you slowly stacked up this damage against them. And so I wondered, that probably is really great in the game because of dumb NPCs and whatnot, but how does this deck actually play against other big decks of the metagame? So a shout out to Sazandora in the comments. I know there's a lot of regulars on the channel that get into some really great discussions, so I really thank all you guys for taking part in that discussion. And let's get into this deck and actually see how it plays. So as I mentioned earlier, this deck does use the base set Polyrath line. So you're going to be using Poliwag and Poliwhirl to work your way up to Polyrath. In this build, I used a 4-3-3 kind of play style, mainly because I didn't want to include Pokemon Breeder. That kind of overcomplicated the deck, and Golduck and Dragonair don't need it, so, why even include it? Poliwrath, you're going to be using that Whirlpool attack, which, if you've seen the Poliwrath video, you know that it can actually be pretty devastating. You can get it off on turn 3. This deck is a huge turn 3 deck. No matter how your setup starts, you're always going to be set up on turn 3 pretty much. So with Whirlpool, you do have to rely on that double colorless and getting it in your hand, but that's not a problem. Dealing 40 damage and discarding is pretty great. And then, of course, the other line is going to be Psyduck and Golduck. Even made one of the Psyducks, the promo version there. I really like that artwork. But Golduck is going to give you an alternate water type attacker that has a different weakness. So Poliwrath is weak to grass, Golduck is weak to lightning. So this does give you a little bit of leeway for your water type attackers, even though lightning and grass are probably the most underused types of this format. But it's that Hyper Beam attack that we're going to be looking to use over and over again. So it requires 3 energy. You're going to get set up on turn 3. Same goes for Dragonair. Dratinis have lower HP than I'm really comfortable with using. I mean, like, Poliwag has the same, though. So early game, you may have to sack a Dratini or a Poliwag just to get your setup, since it is going to take 3 turns. Dragonair can get set up in 2 if you're really lucky and you use the draw power of this deck to get those double colorless in your hands, if you search them out somehow. And then you can start getting those Hyper Beams off on turn 2. But the problem with Dragonair, besides Dratini having low HP, is that it's going to be a sitting duck for your opponent's energy removals. So that early in the game, you don't want your opponent beating you at your own strategy, which is energy deprecation. But Dragonair is a great alternative because it doesn't have any weakness at all and it resists Psychic. So it's a really great alternative attacker to have in this deck. That's why I'm running a 3-3 line of it. Bill and Professor Oak, a little light on the draw power, but I think that's all you need to at least get Pokemon in your hand that you can use Pokemon Trader with, because there's 3 different evolution lines in this deck. You don't want to get them too mixed up. You want to be able to get the cards you need, and the draw power is going to help you with that, but only when assisted with Pokemon Trader. Plus power is going to let you up the damage of Whirlpools and Hyper Beams a little bit. Because Hyper Beam only deals 20 damage, you're not going to be able to win very fast, or you're not going to be able to get all 6 knockouts super fast with it. You're really in for the long game. You want to keep stacking that damage on your opponent's Pokemon, and they're not going to be able to attack you back because Hyper Beam's going to be constantly discarding those energy. Energy removal is going to help with any time that you fall behind. So for those first 3 turns, your opponent's going to be able to lay down energy and attack you. That's when you want to get those energy removals in your hand and play a little bit of catch up. So yes, Hyper Beam is going to be removing 1 energy per turn, and your opponent can only lay 1 energy per turn. But if you get stuck anywhere along the way, those energy removals are going to help you catch back up and really completely deprive your opponent of energy. 4 double colorless energy for Dragonair and Poliwrath, and the rest of the deck is going to be filled out with water energy, of course. That way, Poliwrath and Golduck are able to attack. Dragonair's colorless, so it doesn't really matter. The strategy of this deck is super straightforward, and even if your opponent knows what deck you're running, there's actually not a lot they can do about it when they're playing it and playtesting this deck. it came up a lot that yes, Hyper Beam's going to be discarding energy, but really the only card that can kind of help you out there is energy retrieval, and not a lot of decks ran that. A few Pokemon can work around this, like Promo Mewtwo, where it's actually getting its energy from the discard pile, so it does help that out a little bit. But other than that, this is a tough deck to play against. As far as matchups go, this deck can't really stack up to Rain Dance because Rain Dance can just lay down so much energy at once that no amount of Hyper Beams or Whirlpools are really going to slow it down. And the other is Haymaker because with those cards, you only need one energy to attack. So your opponent's going to be able to just lay those down and attack every turn, even if they are getting discarded right after. Almost every other deck in the format besides those two require attacks with more than one energy cost. And in those cases, they can't do anything to this deck. You can get into some really long battles with damage swap, but Hyper Beam can deal damage to Mr. Mime. You really just have to outlast your opponent on using those Pokemon Centers and stacking up the damage on Chanseys. And that's a type of deck where Gust of Wind can be really useful, because your opponent's going to say, well, they can Hyper Beam my active all they want, but it's not going to discard any energy off of my bench, so I'll start setting up on my bench and then Oko whatever they have as their active. In that case, that's when you are really going to be either using those energy removals to completely disrupt what they're trying to do on the bench, or just use Gust of Wind and bring out an active that does have energy on it so you can discard that way. Most decks in the base set metagame only ran about 15 energy, so once you've used all 4 of your energy removals and Hyper Beam turn after turn, you're really going to cripple a lot of decks that aren't named Rain Dance or Haymaker. This deck even has a great niche as being a counter to Wigglytuff, which didn't really exist all that much. The main thing with Wigglytuff is it does have a lullaby attack for 1 energy that can put you to sleep, meaning you're not going to be able to discard an energy that next turn if you remain asleep. That's where cards like Switch can be added to the deck, moved around a little bit. The trainer base on this deck is a little bit fluid. There's a little bit of leeway with what you can do, and it again depends on your play style. All of these deck builds that I upload are just skeletons, basically. To deal with the problem of special conditions, you could even include a Fossil Dragonite in this deck. That way you could lay it onto a Dragonair you have on your bench and immediately put that Dragonite into play. You're not going to be able to Hyper Beam with it, but you are going to be able to at least get yourself out of a tough spot for a second, and even maybe get off and attack that turn, since it uses 4 colorless the same as the Hyper Beam on the Dragonair did. And because this is a water deck, you could actually make a Rain Dance variant of it, where you include 1 or 2 Blastoise in the deck. That way, much earlier on, maybe even on turn 2, you can lay down that Blastoise off of a breeder and then go straight into a Poliwrath, Golduck, Dragonair, and start using Hyper Beams much earlier. It's basically a fun way to say, look at all the energy I can have, but I won't allow you to have any. Really just take the Rain Dance build that I have on the channel already, replace Lapras and Articuno with any of these lines, and you can really just start Hyper Beaming off of a Rain Dance deck. It wouldn't hit as hard as regular Rain Dance, but it would be a fun alternative. So let me know what you think about this deck. How would you improve the playability of the deck to maybe stack up against some of the bigger threats in the metagame like Haymaker and Rain Dance? And as always, just thanks for watching. Keep those comments going. I love reading the discussion down in the comments. And until next time, bye. Keep sending requests.